Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for our Autism Ontario presentation. Before we get started, we have some housekeeping items we need to cover. At Autism Ontario, we recognize that language is powerful, and the use of referential language as it relates to autism is a sensitive, important, and ongoing conversation. Autism means something different to everyone. Medical professionals and researchers may talk about it one way, and self-advocates and family members may talk about it in a different way. There are two main terms or phrases we hear about used to identify the autistic population. The first is person first language, for example, person with autism, and that reflects the belief that autism is separate from a person and does not define them. Alternately, identity first language, for example, autistic person, reflects the belief that being autistic is an important part of a person's identity and cannot be separated. Both terms will be used in today's presentation to respect both views. However, we encourage you to ask the person you're speaking with what their preference is. For more information on the use of language here at Autism Ontario, I encourage you to look at the language statement released in 2022. Opinions reflected in this presentation are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect Autism Ontario's views. Autism Ontario does not endorse any specific therapy, product, opinion, service, or individual. We do, however, endorse your right for information. Autism Ontario strongly believes that it's important to do your own research and make your own informed decisions. A reminder that during this presentation, we aim to answer all your questions. However, we are unable to answer specific questions about your individual child. It's always a good idea to check with your doctor or pediatrician as a first step before putting any strategy or intervention into place. This is just to rule out any health or medical factors that might be playing a role. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and thank you again for joining us. Let's get started.
Hello everyone, welcome again, and we'll get right into it since there's a lot of ground to cover, as always, on when you only have a half hour. Anyway, I'm Tracie Lindblad, and I'm the speech and language pathologist subject matter expert at Autism Ontario, and just want to disclose the following conflicts quickly before I start. I'm a salaried employee of Autism Ontario. I'm also a clinical advisor for Lingo, which is a speech generating device, and a software for a speech generating device, and I'm on the advisory committee of the Association for Science in Autism Treatment. So what we're going to look at right now is a brief review of what is AAC, some prerequisite skills, choosing a system, setting goals, introducing the AAC system, effective methods of teaching, and some resources and supports. So when we look at the first AAC review, we're going to briefly look at that the primary goal of AAC is to support communication and participation of the individual with complex communication needs. And in the previous series, you can catch those if you missed them. We go into different types of AAC systems, aided, unaided, low tech versus mid tech versus high tech, and it's all explained there. But I'm going to jump right into what are the steps in a good AAC assessment. And really what you're looking at is having an assessment to determine what are the skills and features that your individual child or student requires, and what system, so either alternative or augmentative communication system matches best. So you're going to look at the level of ability, so language skills, motor, learning, sensory skills. You're going to observe that child or that individual in different settings to see if they're different in different settings, which often happens. You're going to involve a larger team. So the individual themselves, if they're able to get their point across somehow, the caregivers, the teachers, the therapists, other people on your team to get their ideas about a communication system. It's best if a speech pathologist or behavior analyst is doing some assessment. So what kind of help or prompting, what kind of icons or pictures work best. So kind of that diagnostic assessment, or what we call a dynamic assessment, to see how much teaching is actually going to be needed, and is one method better than another method. And then you're going to feature match. So you're going to match the system to your child. And that's the piece that a lot of people miss nowadays, because it's easy to go out there, get a tablet, an iPad, and then get software off the internet without knowing, does this really match my child? And then you should trial a couple systems if possible to see what one works best. Because really it's about not what your preferences are, but what works best for communication. So we've just talked about matching. The other thing that you want to think about in matching is the individual's motivation and reinforcers. So for some individuals, they don't like technology. They don't like the audio output. For others, they like certain kinds of pictures. And so you're really going to try and match that. Also consider the family's values and wishes, because it's important, as they're the ones who are using that system all day, every day, and throughout their community and extended families. And there's other things to consider with systems, and that's things like financial impact, the programming or material development that you need, and training. So it is recommended that you have additional support, such as a behavior analyst or educator, AAC specialist, or speech pathologist that has training specifically in AAC and competency in using AAC with individuals with autism. So again, we talked last time about goal selection, and there was a goal selection checklist to help you figure out which goals. But when you're going to implement the system or introduce a system, first you want to look at those prerequisite skills. So those access skills, things like gross and fine motor that you'll need for PACS or sign language or a technology. Motivation and reinforcers, how to determine what your child likes, things that they want to talk about or request. And because those are the things that you're going to have to build in that vocabulary into the system. You want to work on delayed access to reinforcers. So a lot of times we like to give our kids things immediately. And sometimes with children that have trouble speaking, we actually anticipate what they want and give it to them ahead of them even trying to show us or try and ask for it in whatever method they are. And so you're going to have to get the individual sort of used to waiting a bit, because with systems, there is a delay from them pushing a button or exchanging a card to actually getting the item. And then visual discrimination skills. We talked a bit about that last time, which is basically making sense of pictures. So when they see a picture, that they understand the object or the action or the person or place that it corresponds to. We also talked a bit last time about vocabulary selection, and that there are some differences of opinion in this, but right now our research on this topic is telling us that, number one, we pick the vocabulary that matters most to that individual, since that's the vocabulary they'll use the most, and also to think about teaching words that replace challenging behavior. So if there's some activity or a specific item that they want, and if they don't have access to it or can't communicate effectively, that they may show challenging behavior, then those words should be included in the system from the very start. So how do you best introduce an AAC system? So one of the things that is now talked about a lot in the field is to really kind of mirror that developmental pathway that neurotypical kids follow, because that's how language is learned. And so we know that with really young beginning communicators, that they start to use beginning words that are really important to them in their lives. So usually if you think about it, it's the people in their lives, it's any pets, it's food, it's their bottle, it's milk, it's whatever those initial foods are of your family and your culture. And around 12 months of age, we know that typical kids understand about 50 single words and they use about 5 to 10 words. And so what you're looking to do is assess where your child is and then make some decisions about, you know, what is that goal? How many words are we going to work on? And do I have the words that my child really is going to use that are important to them? So if your child has a couple words but doesn't understand many words, then maybe you're looking at a 12 to 18 month level. So you're going to prepare for about 5 to 50 words that you're going to have your materials ready, and you're going to start thinking about what activities can I do or when can I introduce these. And the number, and you want to really look at that this, in neurotypical kids, the number of words increases on a daily and weekly basis. So we're really going to make decisions about what system and how much teaching is right for your child. And really, we want to talk about, in the end, that communication means unprompted. So no help. It means spontaneous. So it means that your child should be coming up to you, asking without any help or without saying, what do you want, or helping them, and being able to communicate through this AAC system what they want, their wants and needs. And so really there are lots of speech pathologists that can help you identify what those sort of natural developmental milestones are in language. The other thing you're going to have to think about is some decisions if you're using a speech generating device, so technology, about setup. So there's no clear-cut answer, unfortunately, right now for choosing one type of organization over another. So there's no research to really guide us. It's pretty individualized. In many studies, there'll be some children who like one type of setup, other children who prefer another. But really, I'm going to show you the few different setups there are, and it really will depend on your individual child. So there's an organization structure that's more traditional, that follows speech. So subject, verb, object organization. So left to right across the frame or the window, and subjects again are people, verbs are those actions, and objects are people, places, or things. So if you think about the way we put sentences together. So that's one type of display. Another display can use categories of words or folders, and that's more abstract and advanced in organization. So individuals can often move towards that type of layout once they're communicating with 50 to 200 words on a consistent basis. So it's not about getting as complex as quickly as possible. It's about matching language and language development to your child. So categories are concepts, and concepts can be difficult for individuals with communication and learning challenges. So you really want to think about how abstract to make this, which makes it more difficult, more response effort, or how to simplify it so you get really nice communication that's independent and spontaneous and practiced a lot throughout the day and the week. So teaching language should not be about memorization of specific pictures or places on a board or device, but about learning what those pictures mean and how they go together to form language and language skills. And I want you to think about like an analogy. Just because you give a speech generating device or a PECS binder doesn't mean your child will understand communication. Very similar to if I gave you a pencil, you wouldn't know automatically how to write a story or even spell or even what to do with it. And so it's all in the teaching. So the teaching is the most important part of an AAC system. It's what do you do with it. So another display is functional use. So we call it a semantic display, and it's organized around activities. So maybe playground or mealtime routines in your home, and all the vocabulary is included on that page. And so you may have seen things like this in schools or preschool where they have a device or a picture board that has all the information. Again, a prerequisite skill of this one is associations, that you know or that your child understands which things go together. That can be taught, but at the same time, it's much easier if they already understand that and are familiar with it. And for some individuals who have not shown the ability to identify or remember things that go together, then this organization might be a bit difficult for them, and it might require more teaching. Again, independence in use is an important part of AAC. So being able to fade back your help and assistance is required for independence. So you're really wanting them to understand that they're in charge of their own communication. And we use this strange term called agency in communication, which means they feel that they're in control of their own actions and their own consequences. And that is, the message is their thoughts, feelings, desires, and wants. So that's what we're trying to get to. So we've talked also, so you see a few different types of, and there displays. There's also some other displays that are on specific types of devices. But really, we want to think about the speed and efficiency. And you're going to have to collect some data in order to assist you in determining is the layout the most effective and efficient that you could do? Are there too many button presses to, get to a word or to get their message heard? So you're really thinking about a few key points. The length of time required to generate a message, the number of button presses required to generate a typical message, or if you're using picture exchange, the number of icons they have to take off and put on a strip or hand to you. The ease and accuracy required to access their frequently used vocabulary. So you want to make that as easy as possible. And then there are all their access skills. So swiping, if they have multiple pages they have to go to, if they have the back button or the home button or clearing, there's a lot of things to think about. But we're really wanting to get it as sort of less response effort as possible. There are some resources that I've put again into this webinar for you. So there's an implementation checklist for speech generating devices, and it's from an agency that does a lot of AAC and that have developed this. And it's a task analysis, which means it's step-by-step breaking through that process so that you can actually see, what should I do next? What should I introduce? How do I do it? Who's involved? And especially if there's a team, it's especially helpful to get everybody on the same page. So that's in the resources for you. And so when we look at teaching has to occur systematically for the best outcomes. So your expectations should be clear, and you only want to teach one new skill at a time. So in picture exchange, first you just teach grabbing a picture and exchanging it, reaching to somebody else. So that's it. We don't teach what's on the picture card. We don't teach anything about labeling it. We don't expect speech. We're really going to break that down so that if something happens, if there's a problem or a barrier, you can analyze it a lot easier if you're only doing one thing at a time, to try and pivot, go back, tweak it, and see what you can do to aid your child in learning that. So you want to keep it simple. You want to follow a manual if it's available. So picture exchange communication system is a manualized intervention. It's almost one of the only things that is. So in speech generating devices, there isn't a manual to help you. And that's what makes it really challenging to teach, is that they're all different, all the apps are different, and they look different, and there's a lot of decisions to make. So really, it's good if you get someone who's got a real good competency in this to help you. You want to teach one or two goals at a time, take data to see progress, and really ensure that they're learning. So what are some of those effective teaching methods? We're going to use evidence-based methods. Things have been tried and true, and we've got lots of data to support that. So motivation is your biggest key. So your child needs to be engaged in it. Will they get what they want? And that will keep them with you. It'll keep them wanting to practice and to use this device or picture exchange over and over again so that they learn it. And so you really want to assess motivation. It really should be fun. This shouldn't look like a lot of work. There shouldn't be tears. You may not even be sitting at a desk. You could be sitting at a table. You could sit on the floor, out in a playground. You're really going to think about what keeps my child engaged. You're going to use assistance, so prompts, cues to help to enable them to be successful. You want to fade back those as quickly as possible, though, because the name of the game really is about independence, and they have to do the work. So the other thing you want to think about is making sure each word is attached to a single meaning. So you don't want to start combining things into phrases initially if your child doesn't learn that way. So especially if you teach something like door, you want them to understand what a door is versus always combining it with open door, because what you don't want them to do is assume or learn that open door is the whole label, because first you want them initially to learn door, but then you may want them to say open door, closed door, go door. You're going to get them to use language in a real varied way, which is how typical language develops. And then you're going to model and practice and repeat and repeat. And so you're going to use that behavior skills teaching, where throughout the day and across environments and people and with objects and activities, you're going to do that practicing. And that's really important. So we talked about manualized interventions, and you're going to teach the basic of communication. So we want spontaneity, independence, we're going to fade. We want to teach requesting initially, so them asking for things they want. And then in picture exchange communication system, you really, there's often people that have done research to show that if you can get to phase 3B, and those skills are mastered, which is called discrimination, then you can jump in over to a speech generating device, and it makes it really easy. And PECS Canada, I've given you 2 links there that has a lot of information about training and a YouTube channel so you can watch. And then there's also, I've provided a table of resource about teaching if you're going to use an iPad. And like we've talked about in the past, when we're talking about technology and AAC, that intersection of technology and AAC, there are definitely prerequisite skills. And this table takes you through the different steps you have to think about and plan for if you're going to use any kind of a technology to use for communication. And then in this slide, I've also kind of shown you what you start with when you're teaching, and then those prerequisite skills. And for beginning learners, it's really going to be about teaching cause and effect, asking, just requesting, or in behavior we call that manding. And then until you get over 50 to 200 words, then you're going to look at combining words and how do you do that. So this is a little bit of a plan. You're going to start where your child is, you're going to model, and we've talked about this vocabulary already. One of the things I really want to talk about is what's important to teach. So politeness, those words for being polite don't carry a lot of meaning initially. So you may want to wait until further down in their teaching to teach those. We don't have to worry about grammar and grammar concepts initially, because you think about little toddlers when they learn to speak. They make a lot of mistakes in grammar. They don't even know there's an order to words, and that's okay. It's more about getting the meaning across. And then think about things that are, we don't think that they're concepts, but they are, like things that are more, the word more. More is a concept. More means that you already have had to have something before you ask for more of it. It's a quantity too. And so you really want to think about those things that are really difficult and to not worry about those at the beginning. There's a place for teaching those later on. There's also another manual I wanted to share with you called Essential for Living. And it's a program for individuals that are complex communication needs. So those individuals that have higher needs and are very complex, and they may be a bit older and they're still not communicating, or they don't have vocal speech, and they may have a number of other areas of difficulty. This is a curriculum. It's assessment plus a curriculum that walks you through how to make decisions about communication, but all those areas in their lives that could make them more independent. There's also another article that I found that is really good. It's called Programming AAC Just in Time for Beginning Communicators, and it's got some really nice how-to information in this article. So it's written more for parents, it's more for lay people. And so it's a really nice article to, like, if you're getting stuck about how do I do this? How do I teach? It's only up to me and I don't know what to do. It actually will give you some examples and walk you through. The last thing I really want to talk about, and then I'll open it up for questions for a few minutes, is that if you're using or thinking of using a speech generating device mainly for beginning communication skills, so that's that single word requesting, so maybe chips or chocolate or juice, then really there might be limited benefit for choosing a speech generating device initially over picture exchange. We know that picture exchange communication system has the best research evidence to date. It's very easy to use because it's got a manual. There's lots of help for it. It may be easier for you if you're doing this on your own to start there and then build up skills, because it's much easier than to use a speech generating device. And especially if we think that, you know, still about 1 in 50 children today are born with autism, and about 25 to 50% of them remain functionally non-vocal communicators. So you really want to think about your job is to teach communication. The earlier you can get at this, the better, and the more competent you are as a teacher, the better. So really concentrate on that functional communication. And when you concentrate on the functional communication, you're really going to concentrate on 3 specific things. 1, the accuracy of their communication. 2, how efficient they are as a communicator. And 3, how effective is their communication. Because those 3 things will help that individual be as independent and self-generating as they can be. And I've given you some resources that have a lot of training in them so that you get as much help as you can if you're on your own, and those can be really helpful. So we have time for a couple questions. And let me take a look because I haven't looked. So we have, and I just want to say our next session is problem solving. And I have gotten so many amazing questions, both during the webinars, but also to my email at work. And so what I think I'm going to do next time is really look at all these questions and group them. And that will be our problem solving, because obviously these are problems, and you've been asking for support. So I'd like to answer them all. So we'll use them as the basis of the next webinar and really systematically go through some of these. So here's a great one. For early communicators, can we use pictures rather than a PECS system? Not entirely sure what you're getting at. PECS is a picture-based system. If you're asking, can we use photographs or different types of pictures? Absolutely. The pictures that are part of PECS should be individualized. So right now, I only use real photos, printed photos, because we can access those on the internet pretty easily. They're really easy to do. So again, it depends, you know, who's helping you with this, but there's no barrier on what kind of pictures you can use. So another one, regarding the slide about choosing the number of words, my son knows hundreds of or perhaps thousands of labels, but spontaneously he uses less than 50 words. So just to clarify, that means we're choosing a system within the 12-month speech category. So yeah, if he's using less than 50 words, he's at about an 18-month level, or coming up to 18 months developmentally. So if you're saying that he labels words, labels usually means expressively can say the word. And so I guess if you're saying, what is this? What is this? He can label them, but he's not using them functionally for communication. That difference in communicating is unique to autism, where individual kids can know the names of lots of things, but they don't use it to communicate. And in behavior analysis, that's called going across verbal operants, which means if you see a cup, you can label it, you know what a cup is, you can ask for a cup, you can name a cup, you can write cup. Those are all kinds of different functions of communication. So what we're talking about in AAC is that the main purpose of AAC is that they independently communicate. So ask for things, talk about things, request things, so not just name it. So yeah, I would say go down to that single words where you're getting even more vocabulary used consistently, and then maybe start to go into that 2-word phrases, which means not I want something. It means maybe if you have lots of things, drinks and lots of food, maybe then you're going to add the word drink juice, eat popcorn, eat chips, drink milk. And so they start to learn that there's variability in how I combine things. I see we're near the end of our time again. These half-hour sessions go by so quickly. I know I'm speaking so quickly to give you a lot of information, but again, like I said, please fill out the survey, put your questions down. Also, if you have specific questions that you want to make sure, if you think of them later, then you can also, and let me just jump to the end and see, it's not here. So you can actually contact me at Autism Ontario, and I think our SME email, which is subject matter expert email, is sme@autismontario.com, and then that will come to our team, and then I can make sure that your question gets answered as much as I can in the next session. And again, I'm looking at all these questions, and they're really varied and very shows a struggle that some people are trying to go through to actually meet the needs of their child. So again, there's lots of resources. I hope today's session was helpful and kind of moving us along. And next time, I think March 9th, I think it is, we'll be looking at a lot of these questions that you've had through this whole series and really getting more into a robust answer for you. I've got one more I'm going to ask quickly. Where in Canada can we get Essential for Living handbook? I order everything right off their website, and it comes really quickly. It used to be called Parent Bookstore or Parent Books, and I forget the name now, on Harvard Street in Toronto. The new name escapes me, but they actually have a large selection of books for autism, so it may be there. Anyway, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Stay safe over the next couple of days if you're in Southern Ontario while the storm comes in, and hope to see you March 9th. Thanks. Bye for now.